All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to today's show. All right, we got a great show for you. As you know, we have the story of the right-wing media. They're looking at Parkland and the whole tragedy that happened there as an excuse, and the Parkland students' pro-gun activism as an excuse to possibly cut public education. Whoa. Yeah. So this is probably, to me, this is like what happened when our education system works. Like, that is, to me, like, the best, the most shining stars, what the Parkland students are doing, the shining element of our education system there, so that's for sure. So, yeah, witnessing the horror of a parade and articulate and smart teenagers speaking confidently about the role of intersectionality and social movement they ignited, the conservative leaders have seized on the explosion of activism launched by the MSD kids to make a case that so-called government schools or traditional public schools are a fundamental threat to their vision of the country. David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez are all the evidence they need. Right-wing media, they are putting up this poster, they're putting up this narrative that is going to hurt schools of all of us, pretty much. So, yeah, I gotta slip into my Mark Levin. He is a prominent right-wing radio host. You may not know him. So, yeah, this is what he says. He talks like exactly like this. This is a perfect imitation. The radical progressive agenda is now basic propaganda in our public school system. Wish it could be this entertaining. I can't be this entertaining. Yeah, these government schools have become propaganda mills, whether it's genitalia assignment, bathrooms, and gyms. Whether it's a school lunch program, it's even politicized. Wait, how? I don't get it. The radical environmentalism is advanced. Capitalism is trashed. It sounds like a old duck. Like if a racist Fox News watching duck could talk, that's what it would sound like when Mark Levin talks. Just quacks crazy conspiracy theories on the radio every day. So yeah, Levin, who has leaned hard to his message that the purpose of public education is to indoctrinate students, insists that the public schools have been taken over by liberals and their unions, whether it's the school lunch in the cafeteria, the different plays and the musicals that take place, the history class, social studies, current events. They push the agenda progressive of the Democratic Party. I'm sure you would know because you all remember with the great quality education you apparently got. Yeah, so following the national student walkout for gun control, the United States Parents Involved in Education, a right-wing education activism group, released a statement also blaming the public school curriculum. Reading, quote, government K-12 schools are teaching politically based social justice values. Students are taught the faults of America, Christianity, Western civilization, and white men. Well, there are some faults there. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, should we just ignore the faults and ignore all the parts about slavery and the big parts of American history and, like, Japanese internment camps and all that? Sadly, children are not being taught accurate history of the United States and the reasons for American exceptionalism. They are not being taught the historic facts about the hundreds of millions of unarmed people of all races murdered by their own governments in the 20th century. Not really sure what they're referring to there. Lack of historical context leads students to believe. Oh, this is for guns. Oh, I get it. So this is for pro-gun use. They're saying you need guns to protect against yourself. So lack of historical context leads students to believe the only way. And by the way, what unarmed people of all races murdered by their own governments in the 20th century? Like, was this like in Iraq, Iran? I don't know. Like under some like despotic. This doesn't seem like America, but I don't know. I could be wrong there. Maybe I just don't have the quote unquote historical context. So lack of historical context leads students to believe the only way that they can be safe in their school is to further restrict and or take guns away from law-abiding Americans. Children deserve better. Until policymakers implement proven school safety strategies, and they were not very much proven, but okay. Because, even Parkland had 2 sheriff's deputies, and I was saying on the podcast with Zach Lipschultz, we're getting to like a pretty unexpected, pretty heated gun control debate. I mean, in Parkland, they had like 3 deputies out there. And they all messed up. So you don't want to leave it up to something that could be decided by human error, this way, that way, etc. You gotta make something more significant. You got to make something more set in stone than that, like, in my opinion. You just got to get it more straightened out. So, yeah, until policymakers implement proven school safety strategies, and until schools stop teaching politically biased social justice values, the only way parents can raise children safely is to be well-educated American citizens, is to teach at home or in good private schools, charter schools. Yeah, Betsy DeVos. Anyway, yeah. Just days after the Parkland shooting, right-wing radio host Rush Limbaugh went so far to suggest that such tragedies only occur in public schools, not private religious schools. That's an inescapable observation. It's true. A call on a show offered by way of explanation. I mean, there's almost no rules in public schools. I would know. I'm in one. So, is there any rules in public schools, you may ask? Yes, there are. There most definitely are. It's not a lawless, chaotic society. And this is one of the best run public. This district that in Parkland, this was apparently one of the safest districts out there. It was very well run, and it shows you it can happen anywhere. Like, it was one of the most crime-free places in America. It's one of the safest places to live in America. The school district was reportedly very good. There's a lot of, like, New Yorkers. If they ever interview people on TV from Parkland, they are almost all New Yorkers sounding. Like, the dads are, like, from New York. They're like, yeah, I think we should get some gun reform. A lot of them, if you notice, they talk like that because, like, there's a lot of people who move down there. They put probably maybe a lot of money into the school system, and maybe that's why they kind of boost it up a little bit. But yeah, that's what we don't know. So Ted Nugent, a NRA board member, said last week on the radio that schools and the media are brainwashing students. The lies from these poor, mushy-brained children. Ooh, that's a big glass house right there. Calling people poor, mushy-brained children. Ted Nugent, who literally was so afraid of going to the Vietnam War that he literally pooped his pants so people thought he was mentally insane. It was in there for days. Like, that's just disgusting. You got to be pretty mushy-brained to do that. So these lies from these poor, mushy-brained children who have been fed lies and parrot lies, I really feel sorry for them. It's not only ignorant and dangerously stupid, it's soulless. I'm afraid to say it hurts me to say this. The evidence is irrefutable. They have no soul. Let's give a ironic round of applause for Ted Nugent. You did it. Yeah, so the condemnation of public schools for their ability to create such dangerous figures as Parkland students, they're so scary, comes at a time when conservatives move more broadly towards gravitating towards increased support for charter schools, which undercut liberal teacher unions and give schools much more freedom over the curriculum. So they pretty much, they undercut teachers unions, something they like, and something that teachers unions are already pretty undercut. The conditions for teachers in America right now are not good at all. So the lines between church and state in charter schools are more complicated, in some cases blurrier than in traditional schools. In a post published last month on the website for the Heartland Institute, the right-wing think tank, the authors spoke favorably about religious schools and charters, writing, "It's obvious that the traditional government school system is broken." Don't really see that. I don't get it. Maybe because, and if it's broken at all, but and I'm in that government school system right now, I think it's working perfectly fine. But if it's broken at all, I don't think that there is any problem. I really just don't think that there is any problem with it, other than the fact that Republicans have just been cutting education every time they've been in office, and every single solitary time they've had the chance to. So yeah, public opinion polling released over the past year reinforces the idea of a growing partisan divide for charter schools. Paul Peterson, the director of Harvard's program on education policy and governance, wrote recently, as late as 2010, the members of two parties did not differ significantly in their opinions on charters. By 2015, a 20-point gap had opened up, and now 30 percentage points, 75% of Republicans, but only 45% of Democrats would be okay with charter schools. So that's a little bit worrying. And that could be an interesting front for campaigning on in the next few years. So that could be something to watch for. Now we move to our next story, how John Bolton, he's apparently manipulating the Constitution, trying to attack North Korea. That's a little bit worrying. Yeah, so several weeks before President Trump announced that John Bolton would soon be his new national security advisor, Bolton wrote a peculiar op-ed for the Wall Street Journal titled "The Legal Case for Striking North Korea First." What made Bolton's column on was not his belligerence — he's always been the embodiment of Americans' violent id in human mustache form — but rather the invocation of international law. According to Bolton, it is now legal for the U.S. to attack North Korea. So it's generally accepted that states may engage in preemptive war if they face a so-called imminent threat, under the classic formulation articulated by former U.S. Secretary of State Daniel Webster. Webster wrote this, by the way, from 1837. It's been around a while. Webster wrote, "The preemptive attack is only valid if the necessity of self-defense is instant, overwhelming, leaving no choice of means and no moment of deliberation." This is a high threshold, which means it makes sense given that Webster was not supporting a preemptive war by the U.S., but arguing it was bogus for British soldiers to claim that they had been engaging legitimate self-defense when they entered U.S. territory from Canada. But Bolton has spent his entire career expressing deep contempt for the entire concept of international law. For Bolton, it's a meaningless theological exercise utilized by the academic left to prevent the U.S. from defending itself. He does not allow the international customs. He does not allow that international customs may have their place in establishing navigation protocols for seafaring states. So it's something that you kind of need if you want other countries to interact with each other in a more efficient, more successful, more productive way. So that's the thing there. You want everyone to interact. You want everyone to kind of get along. You want everyone to kind of work together in a functional basis, and that's going to be pretty hard to do if you don't have a set of internet